Hi, I'm Caitlin Tiller and this is Just Causes. We're a program about organisations and individuals campaigning for positive change in our community. It's been 5 years since the pristine coastline of James Price Point in the Kimberley region of Western Australia was chosen as the site to build the world's second biggest gas hub. One activist group has been campaigning hard against the project for 2 long years, and it seems victory is finally on the horizon.
And here we have today in Fremantle one of the biggest protests against an environmental obscenity coming down the line in world history. Here in Fremantle, that's you today.
The Kimberley region, one of the world's last great wildernesses. 423,000 square kilometres of largely heritage-listed land, home to Indigenous communities and their sacred sites.
We're currently campaigning to prevent a major industrial development proposals in the Kimberley region.
The Wilderness Society has been fighting to protect historic locations like James Price Point for 37 years. The Society's Peter Robertson has overseen many campaigns across the state, including Ningaloo Reef, the Great Western Woodlands and the old-growth forests in the south.
Colin Barnett, the Premier, has already made it very clear that there's a massive gas fracking proposal for the Canning Basin in the southern half of the Kimberley. So if James Price Point goes ahead, then there will be, in all likelihood, there will be a massive push for large-scale gas fracking across much of the Kimberley, and that'll have a devastating environmental and social impact on the region.
No gas! No gas!
Thousands marched the streets of Fremantle to support the Save the Kimberley concert. Headliners John Butler Trio and Missy Higgins gave a free performance to oppose the gas hub.
Both sides of politics took notice that 20,000 people were able to come out in what has been, if not one of the biggest, then perhaps even the biggest show of community members in an environmental issue in recent years.
Heidi Knorr, who is the project officer of the Kimberley campaign, says volunteers are the heart and soul of the organisation.
It is really part of the role of the Wilderness Society to stand up for members of the community and make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen in government.
The Wilderness Society was formed in 1976 as an entirely volunteer-run organisation, funded only by public donations. Now they have 120 paid staff nationally and thousands of volunteers.
I mean, we wouldn't be able to do the campaigning that we do if we didn't have hundreds of other people who volunteer, whether it's for an hour a week or, a day a week or whatever it might be. If we didn't have those volunteers, we wouldn't be able to do anything like what we try to do.
Former Environment Minister David Templeman says activism is the key to protecting the environment.
In a democracy, people have the right to express their opinions and have a right to actually have those opinions heard.
The Gulara Baloo, the traditional landowners of James Price Point, have been working alongside the Wilderness Society to protect the region.
In the colonial days, this is a democratic society. We are all free. We should be able to express our rights.
To me, it was very much putting a gun at the head of the traditional owners and also the local community.
I've lived here for 28 years and I'm not leaving.
The reason the Broome community and traditional owners are so concerned about this and they're so offended by this so-called jobs argument is that they can easily look south down at the Pilbara and they can see what's happened to towns like Karratha and Port Hedland and what happens when large companies come in and promise the world and promise thousands and thousands of jobs for people and then end up just having to fly in FIFO workers because the local people do not have those kind of skills.
With us to talk more about the issue are Upper House Greens MP Robin Chappell and Miles Parrish, President of the Liberal Club at Curtin University. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
How has the public outcry and activist involvement impacted on the Kimberley Gas Hub?
Look, I certainly think it had something to do with the outcome, but in the main the outcome was made on purely economic grounds. Quite clearly the company did a good evaluation of the process, and after that came up with their decision to go for FLNG.
And Miles, what is the Liberal position on the proposal?
Well, I know there's a lot of disappointment surrounding the current, and for the present cancellation of the project. Certainly it's a missed opportunity for Woodside to be able to give back to the community. There was potential $1.5 billion investment in local Indigenous communities, for example. And it's just a shame that there won't be this investment in WA.
Robin, looking back now, what are your thoughts on the campaign leading up to this point?
Look, I think that the campaign was a very organic one. It was a local community campaign, but as I sort of indicated, it wasn't one that was driven by anybody. It actually came out of the community. 60% of the community opposed it. Now the issue is that there was huge divergence of views amongst the Indigenous people, and it did a lot to damage the Indigenous community up there. The people who obviously were supportive and the people who were opposed. That I think has been the legacy. The economic return to the state remains exactly the same as it was, whether it's onshore or offshore, because 1/5 of the Browse development, 1/5 of the Browse development sits in state waters, so we will gain the royalty. So it didn't really matter where it went, but we still get the royalty.
And Miles, your thoughts?
Well, look, I just, like I said before, it's a shame that we won't have this big investment in an onshore project on WA land, which would have created a large amount of local jobs and stimulated local economies. But yes, ultimately, as Robin said, it was made for economic reasons, and if Woodside thinks that it's not economically viable, then we should probably respect that.
Speaking more generally now, Miles, what are your thoughts on environmental activism?
Well, look, I think all activism has its place. We need to be careful to consider, the impact of all projects on environmental situations, but by the same token, the environment can't be our only concern, because ultimately, people have to have some form of income and be able to live. So there's sort of, you've got to take from both baskets in a sense and see what the best outcome can be in the most equitable way.
And Robin, your thoughts?
Well, I think environmental activism, you should put the word activism associated with that. Recently, David Attenborough and more like, I had breakfast this morning with Sir Bob Geldof, and he's sort of basically saying, well, we actually have to remember our social responsibility to community and to the world and to the environment. So I don't think of it as activism, I just think it's part of our core being that we should actually value what we've got. Now, this whole project came out of a plan in 2005 put forward by Alana McTiernan to industrialise the Kimberley. So, yeah, environmental activism, if you want to use that word, is here for the long haul. We've just got to work as an industry with that notion.
Returning to the project, what are the implications of a floating gas hub compared to one at James Price Point?
Okay, we do actually have a number of floating projects already. They're not quite LNG projects, but we're now looking at the Prelude FLNG and also the Browse FLNG. In having looked at the project, I'm basically an engineer, that was my trade, it's cutting edge. It's exciting. Its impact on ground will be far less than a mega port, and its impact on the marine environment will be significantly less as well.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Robin and Miles, thanks for coming on Just Causes.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Nick Maisie was just 20 years old when he had the idea to create a new way of bringing people together. Now he runs an amazing organisation called Befriend Inc. that is helping hundreds of people connect through social clubs and events. For Just Causes, I'm Caitlin Tiller.
My name is Nick Maisie. I guess I've grown up in Perth, spent 25 years here. I studied occupational therapy. I've done a little bit of work in youth mental health. I now work with a group called Big Help Mob, and a few years ago I started up a non-profit called Befriend Inc. I work a lot of long hours, but I guess because I love what I do, I work really hard, and it doesn't seem like work to me. Occasionally it does, you know, we all have our parts of the job that we don't enjoy as much, but for the most part, Befriend is just this ongoing learning experience for me.
I was in an administration role, so I was in a meeting and I was taking the minutes. And the presentations were really boring, and then in walks this young sort of 20-year-old kid, and at the time I was like, oh yeah, you know, he's pretty cute, so I was interested in listening as well. And then he just came out, he was really professional, really witty, really, you know, really smart, and then he was talking about at the time how the conception of Befriend.
I guess Befriend is really all about giving people a space where they feel like they can be themselves, the best possible version of themselves.
That hurts, man. That actually hurts.
And in that space they can form social connections with people. The philosophy behind Befriend is that it's based on the idea that it's a basic human need for everybody to feel that sense of belonging and connection with other people. My brother has been involved since we first started Befriend. He was our treasurer, sits on our board. My sister helps out at social club events, at the barbecue, comes along to the ball. My mum and dad used to run social club events as well and come along and help out at the barbecue. My grandpa was our first sponsor, put the first cheque for $100 towards Befriend. I feel quite humbled by it. I feel quite humbled by how many volunteers and supporters have gotten behind Befriend as well. So it stopped quite a while ago feeling like a project of Nick Maisie and feeling like an organisation or a movement that is the baby of a whole bunch of people. It definitely gives me a sense of belonging just through my involvement in Befriend, you know. I think my role in Befriend, being part of a team, doing something that I love with other people, sharing that experience with other people, it definitely mirrors what we're actually trying to create with Befriend through the social club and through our other social projects.
You know when he walks in the room, you're like, yeah, that's Nick Maisie, you know, that's the Befriend guy, kind of. A lot of our members, you know, associate Befriend with Nick since he's been there from the start. He's a bit of a star. Yeah. He's a bit of a Befriend star.
Because I work a lot of hours, going for a run helps me burn off a bit of steam. Gives me a physical sense of being in control of my life when things at Befriend or at work seem a little bit out of control or a bit crazy. There was one particular moment that I can reflect back to. I was an occupational therapy student at the time, and I received an email through the OT school at Curtin, and it said something along the lines of, "Hi, my name is Tim. I'm a 23-year-old guy. I like to go to the beach. I like to see movies. I just like to spend time with other people. I don't have any friends, and I'd really like to meet some new people. Is there anybody who's interested in getting to know me?" I guess that caused me to do a lot of internal questioning about how important it is to have good people in your life, something that I had really taken for granted. When I was a final year occupational therapy student, I got the opportunity to travel to India as one of my placements. I went to an institution called Ananda Niketan, which is in a fairly remote part of West Bengal, and spent 6 weeks there working with men, women, children, and it was quite confronting in a lot of situations, but I guess it was very enriching for me as well, just to hear those honest stories. And I'd love to go back there and see what sort of an impact those projects have had, if they're still sustained. In 5 years, I've got no idea where I'll be. Might be still in Perth, might have left to go and do another community development project. Love to spend a bit more time back in India or somewhere in Asia, working in one of the villages there. So I'd like to hope that Befriend is at a point where I could totally remove myself from it if I chose to, and it would be this self-sustaining organisation that was underpinned by a huge team of really quality people.